There's been a big explosion in Manchester city centre.
The explosion, which could be heard 2 miles away, shattered windows over a half-mile radius.
Another IRA perversion, another multi-million-pound bill, another city centre to be rebuilt. The shattered buildings are unsafe. Structural engineers will have to decide whether or not to complete the demolition begun yesterday by the IRA. Dented but unbowed, the city remains defiant.
Well, I remember vividly actually the day of the bomb. I think it was a Saturday morning, wasn't it? And I was actually at home I lived in Worsley at the time, so 10 miles out of the city centre, but I actually heard the bang. I thought, what's that? And someone said, oh, I think that's a bomb. I said, of course it's not.
I was part of the management team at the Hacienda in '96. Probably that Saturday night was the only Saturday night in the Hacienda's history that it never opened.
I was on the Mancunian Way at the time the bomb went off. Saw the helicopter and this plume of paper and dust whooshed up and streams of people bleeding, walking dazed.
But I don't think at that stage anyone realised the actual damage that was caused.
No.
Parts of some buildings were completely destroyed. Glass was blown out of almost every window in the centre of the city.
The day after the explosion of the bomb, a task force had been set up here and work started, replanning the city centre.
It was a phenomenal amount of damage to be unearthed. There was a time urgency, which is why when the task force was set up and got into the swing of things, when Howard Bernstein and Richard Lee started to pull their various skills together, things did indeed happen very quickly.
The speed at which the civic authorities of this city came out of its shell to actually deal with that event and start what was really a continuous project of a macro regeneration was by any standards outstanding.
There was an international competition who were going to be designers, won by Manchester Practice, Ian Simpson, now Simpson Huff, of actually master planning, not just replacing what was there before, but actually thinking, what can we do better?
I think the opportunity to recreate was identified very quickly and was fueled by the very positive comments that were coming out of the politicians. And was this sort of can-do thing?
There was this unified approach of the public sector and the private sector and the professionals and developers all working together, working for a vision to ensure that Manchester post-bomb was better than Manchester pre-bomb.
There's been some hugely successful residential developments in the city since the bomb, and it's no coincidence that developers have chosen to come to the city because they saw in the aftermath of the bomb the willingness and openness of the public sector to work with the private sector.
The first headline that we came out with was, "They can't take the heart out of our city," and that was the way the partnership working sort of coalesced and carried forward, and where we were looking to work in partnership with developers.
Part of the reason why in 1997, 1998 we were embraced by the city was due to the potential, the size of our plans and potentially the significance of what Spinningfields could add to the city.
Ian Simpson in particular has long argued that it was his ambition to open up part of North and East Manchester as a consequence of that break, and to some degree I think he was probably correct in that.
There was some really interesting plans developing for the Urbis Centre, and then, you know, outside of the city, one of the biggest changes we saw was at East Manchester as a stadium was building for the Commonwealth Games.
There was a real ambition about Manchester, and it was one of the things that drew me back to the city, and I think thousands of other people as well, that this was a city really going places, where they'd embraced partnerships, there'd been the audacity of the Olympic bids, and I think it showed that the city wanted to achieve greater things than just being the third or fourth tier English city. There's been various city institutions like Midas, like Marketing Manchester, which have always shown a very professional way of showing Manchester in its best possible light. But for me, the role of New Economy in providing economic thinking, thought leadership, planning, research into the different crosswinds and trends in the economy has been absolutely pivotal. In 2007-8, they did a big piece of research called the Manchester Independent Economic Review, and for me, that told some bold truths. I mean, if I was trying to sell Manchester internationally at that time, and they were publishing the kind of workforce stats and the poverty stats at the time, I'd have wanted to suppress it. But I think Manchester's a mature city, that it was prepared to admit what its challenges were, and put them front of centre of a strategy to spread out the wealth that had been created in the middle of the city and to embrace that as some of the challenges of the future as well.
We had the ability to start with what's called repercussion the following year. Pat Carney wanted something for young people, drive football back into the city centre. So Steve Smith from Ear to the Ground created Repercussion, which then turned into Depercussion, which was a multi-stage music festival. Which, you know, the legacy is there today for that, for Park Life, which I still produce in Easton Park. And we wouldn't have got that sort of thing away if it hadn't been for a change in attitude, a can-do sort of feeling.
And Manchester's always had a great reputation for sport, for regeneration, but not so much for arts and culture. And in a number of meetings post-bomb with the city and post-Commonwealth Games, it was thinking about what can we do. And out of this came this wonderful idea, the Manchester International Festival.
We seem to accept the idea of elite sportsmen wherever we look, but we don't necessarily accept the idea of elite artists. And I think to make that once every 2 years platform for some of the great international artists to come to Manchester is a wonderful achievement. One of the things that one can say has been extremely successful for Manchester, and that was really the kind of configuration that we now know as the Northern Quarter. It's quite the most identifiable and characterful part of Manchester city centre, and I think we overlook that.
There are two different things, I think, that make a city business friendly. One is the kind of welcome that they give to businesses who want to invest and provide a soft landing, which Manchester's always been very good at. And the other one is the planning system, in order to do new developments and have a really joined up approach to where different developments are going to go, what kind of zones they're going to have, and that's really exemplified by developments such as Spinning Fields.
I know that since we started Tuna Fish, we've managed to get support and help and guidance for people right across the business spectrum.
The key thing about Manchester is it's not London. London comes with so many flaws in transport, the ecosystem. It also comes with its own compromises in space and the way of operating. It also doesn't provide the talent pool that we've got in the northwest of England. There are very strong ties now with the universities. The Northern Powerhouse and all the opportunities that can bring is making Manchester very much the place to be. What the leaders need to continue doing is what they've been doing for the past 10, 15 years, which is making Manchester continuing to lead the trend in innovation. This business is going to be about creativity, where we have Media City, but more importantly, we need to look at technology now.
The next 20 years are going to be really exciting for Manchester. There are some key new developments planned in the form of things like St John's, which is the former Granada Studios site. We've got St Michael's, the former police station site. We've got Airport City, which is really exciting. And we've got these thriving tech and science sectors, which just continue to grow and blossom.
This city is now going to evolve, not necessarily simply as a place to work, but it's going to evolve very quickly in a place to live.
I say in 20 years' time you'll see many, many more kids on the street of Manchester, you'll see many, many more schools opening, you'll see many, many more facilities.
If we want to attract and keep people to stay who have graduated, if we want the office occupiers from the industries that, with the contemporary industries that surround us, then this place has to be provocative and edgy and interesting and challenging, and it has to build on its long history of all of those qualities and not become a second-tier alternative to London. It has to actually define its own identity and strength and confidence.
We want people to come and visit Manchester, we want people to relocate their companies here. And who makes those choices is individuals. And when they make those choices, it's about what schools can I get, what's my house going to be like, what's my standard of living going to be like, what culture's going to be like, can I go to galleries, can I go to theatre, can I have an enjoyable life? And Manchester can really say yes, yes and yes on so many fronts.